gente colocou o nosso jogo pra cima dos gringos.
Nosotros como latinos temos muita energia e pues al ganar.
A gente vai focar no agora porque é mais importante.
Mais o Gu, pressiona, não deixa a metadinha ser feita. E de qualquer jeito aí o levou dele, Edu! 3 kills do Edu!
Baby, I be running, yeah. Flash in the candle, I'ma go Rambo. I'ma get lit, no candle.
Pra dentro da jaula!
Looking like a scandal.
E o round fica pra The Union, que vence a série 2-0.
Put in way more work and way more effort than any other team here, so that gives me confidence that we work harder than everyone else.
A 2v5, it should be impossible, but they have done it. The ace for net, the round for the guard, and we're tied up, swapping sides.
I'd like to 2-0 the guard. I'd like to 2-0 every team in this event.
I think this matchup for us should be easier compared to before.
Nismo, it would have to be a 1v4. He's got a lot of time and the spike, and a couple of solo chows here. Hold on a second.
30 seconds.
Now to the 1v2. Here's the double peek. It's the second. Oh! Are you kidding me?
I'm a champion, I need some trophy.
Sacamos todo lo que teníamos dentro, porque son muchas cosas las que hemos pasado para estar aquí.
Foi o Mister de abril, ponto da Fusion, que vence por 2-0 pra cima da 0-0.
They won't get the best of me. I've been cooking all day. That was the recipe. I ain't choose the game, chose me.
A gente quer muito passar pra essa franquia e eu acredito que a gente consegue levar esse campeonato, sim.
2-0 na série The Union, vence em 80.
I think we're going to demolish the guard. We're going to demolish every other team in this event, just mainly because I want to play the Union.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to VCT Ascension Americas, where we are having the greatest tournament, honestly, so far. I feel like we've gotten to have it all. We've gotten the close games, we've gotten the overtimes, we've gotten some stomps, and hoping as we move on forward into our bracket, we can have a little bit of more of everything. I'm Sierra, joined here by Dan Dryad, and I hold shift. Dan, you're ready for some cold games today? You got your warm hat on?
Yeah, I mean... things are getting hot, you know, so I had to also be in that vibe for the matches that we've had so far. And I know you mentioned it, a lot of overtimes, a lot of close maps, but we've only had 2 O's, and I feel like that is gonna change today with the rematch that we have for first match between the Union and Fusion, and the rematch that is a classic for North America, that being the Guard and M80.
Yeah, Shift, looking at the bracket and how things have been shaking up. When you see the 2-0s, I feel like some people's gut reaction is the fact that, hey, some people are being stomped, some people are doing the stomping. I will say, though, the games that we had yesterday, we got to see such a great look coming out from our 2 teams that are advancing on.
Oh, absolutely. And look, we may have came into yesterday kind of expecting 2-0s, but we didn't expect it to be Fusion getting a 2-0 versus 0-0 Nation. They looked like a brand new spanking team fresh out the box. So I don't know where it was during the group stage, but it showed up in a major way during the upper bracket round 1. M80 also, I think they showed a lot of resilience in map 1 versus 9Z, and then the straight takeover that we kind of expected to see when they eventually got to their map pick for map number 2. So that 2-0 went a little bit more as expected. But today, I agree with Dryad that these matches have the potential of going the distance and at least being very close no matter how many maps we see.
Yeah, and looking at our first series of the day, Fusion going up against the Union. That different look that we got to see coming out from Fusion, we have to see that in spades coming out today, Dan, because the Union is definitely not a team to be underestimating here.
The Union is definitely the favorite team in Brazil, but at this point, potentially the favorite team to win Ascension, even over those American teams, that North American teams. So it's honestly a team that you need to be very careful of, a team that has been dominant, and a team that now Fusion is a little bit more familiar with. We remember that match that they had in the group stage. It was a 2-0 for the Union. It was a 13-7, 13-6, pretty much one-sided for the most part, with a couple fights that got close, a couple of those rounds, but I feel like the thing that makes the Union strong is how good their read is on everybody, especially a Fusion that likes to get a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah, I think the thing about this Union team is that they came in looking really polished to begin with, and they've only advanced on that when it comes to preparing for the teams on the other side, like Dryad is mentioning. But the thing that's different about this bracket portion compared to groups is that it looks like a lot of our other teams are settling into now being in Brazil. So that home field advantage that the Union may have coming into this event may no longer be there in spades like there was before. Just comes down to, can actually this Furious team do anything to really sap this Union squad? Because Fusion is still looking like a team that needs to make some corrections, and you cannot afford to make mistakes against this Union team.
It was something, though, that Edu tweeted after the match that we got to see yesterday, talking about just how he was happy with the performance that we got to see coming out in yesterday's matches. So I feel like when there's that recognition of the team too, like, hey, okay, we weren't doing this great tour, but I'm happier with how things are going on, happier with how this work has been panning out, Dan. It would be really exciting going in today, seeing more of that work potentially come to fruition.
If you look at not only the matches and how they went down for Fusion, but the energy, the tweets, everything that they're putting up, you can tell how passionate these guys are and how much effort they've been putting. You can tell also by the tweets that they're making, especially Kamikaze, the coach, but all the players talking about this is the moment that we've been waiting for, that international win, first ever international win that they get. It's a big deal for Fusion, and they got it yesterday, but it doesn't get easier, right? It does get a lot more difficult, especially when you're in that upper bracket and going against the Union now.
Yeah, I'm at least hopeful seeing Fusion and how they've just been able to perform and improve just in Ascension themselves here, Shift, that this then could be a team that, even if yesterday's match, it was expected that maybe they would be the team that was O2'd, that what we're seeing here when we're looking at improvements could really show that, hey, this could be that first map here going that third map.
Yeah, so, okay, I know that this is a lot of numbers on screen for you guys at home, so I'll break it down to you guys in segments of 3. During the group stage, this team looked completely lost. They were only winning 38% of their full buy rounds. That was matched up with a very poor overall eco advantage. They were only 5-12 when they actually held an advantage in weaponry, which is not good whatsoever. And then that statistic also kind of carries on for them having a below 50% win rate when they're actually playing a full versus full buy. But you go back to yesterday and look at the same categories and how much more improved they were. 20 for 9 when it came to what they were able to do when they were at full purchase, improving from 38% to nearly 70%. In their rounds that they had an economic advantage, they were 15-3. That's some of the best that we've seen throughout the entirety of Ascension to this point. And then they also improved marginally so on what they were able to do when they got into those full gun versus full gun rounds. So they're managing their economy better, they're playing better as a squad, and when they're forced to be able to kind of pick up these must-win rounds when they're at an advantage, now they're starting to convert it. And it's just like, where did this come from? Because the results were tragic when it came down to what they did in groups, but then yesterday all of a sudden it was a totally different story, and that was their main reason for success, is when they had full weapons in their hands, they were more often than not coming on top of the round. And even just to add a little bit of insult to injury for their opponents, they were doing it almost flawlessly a lot of the time. We did not see a lot of 1v2s, 2v2s, things like that. It was a lot of 3-4 men surviving for the side of Fusion, and that's great news and something that they will have to hold true going into today against the Union.
And that is when it is the most important, right? In a big match like this one, a rematch where you already get to know your opponent a little bit more, and you ask Shift, where is this coming from? Where did this come from? That crazy performance that we got to see yesterday, this is actually just another day when you see Latin America North, when they were competing against all those other teams like Six Karma. It was constantly insane plays, insane ideas coming from Fusion that actually got to be executed in the right way and end up the right way. And part of it is the success that we saw yesterday by these two guys, Darker and Verdi. And honestly, you can talk about anybody in this team from the performance that they had, but these two, they had insane performances when it came to finding success, finding that space that seemed like in the past matches for the group stage was lacking a lot more.
And I actually looked just as how these two players combined in particular, because Verdi, when they had played against Union last time, was just 4-12 when it came to the first kills to first deaths. He was getting farmed by largely Askia on the other side. But yesterday, he was 12 for 7. He had a 1.7 overall first KD rate. That is unbelievable. So when it comes down to how Darker is setting up Verdi to get into space, largely playing on either a Neon or a Raze. They were so successful in doing that yesterday. So you want to talk about how the team has become successful, where exactly that starts? It's with these two guys right here, because the improvement from Verdi statistically from between yesterday and group stage is astronomical. The easiest stat is to look at his overall ACS. He was only averaging a 204 in groups. Yesterday he had that 249. So it just automatically goes to show that if he's able to pull that kind of combat score in combination with Darker, this team can make some waves. It's just tough because the opponent on the other side of the field today is not 0-0 Nation. It's one of the cleanest squads we've had to this point. So yes, we're throwing some copium out there for the Latin American fans, but again, these are the must-haves if Fusion are going to have a chance versus the Union today.
Especially too, if you're comparing specifically Verdi's results back into the group stage, well, one of the teams they went up against was the Union, and it was a match that didn't necessarily go too well overall for Fusion looking in at this. There was a couple of moments, especially when we got on that first map, it was like, wait a second, but I feel like, Dan, things just really slipped, and then it was just like a snowball effect going on from there.
And if we remember something that we mentioned early on, kind of the silliness, the craziness that we see for Fusion, this was it, right? Where we didn't know exactly how the compositions were going to look for these maps, especially for Pearl, because last time in that final that we got to see between Latin America, they were playing Arena here. But they went even crazier, I feel like, with a Yoru and a Neon being played on Pearl. And I feel like some ideas were nice towards that B-side, going all the way back with that TP and trying to create that space with the Neon as well on that wall, but it got read so easily by the Union. And so my question is, are we going to be seeing something similar today? What are the ideas and how much are they backed up? Because this is something that Kamikaze, the coach, talked about constantly. We have many different things that we're hiding and waiting for the chance to show.
Well, they got to show it now and they got to show it early, I think, because the Union was dominating on all fronts on the map pool that they played last time. We had, like, I think Husky had like 8 double kills. He had like a couple of 3Ks and maybe even like almost an ace in a couple of rounds. Like, he was just doing whatever he wanted to do.
Insane.
That cannot happen today. This guy's nuts. He probably could be labeled as one of the best, if not the best Jet player that we have right now in the VCT Americas Ascension tournament. So something has to slow him down first and foremost, especially considering the fact that we will likely see similar maps overall, since the fact that both these two teams, they largely share, I think, a kind of a map pool in certain regards. Obviously the Union, you could look at and say they are more fluent across the board, but I assume that we're likely going to be seeing a lot of repeats coming into today, simply due to the fact that, you know, Fusion did look better on a couple of the maps that they played last time around. But
yeah,
the big X factor here for Union is this guy right here. Askia was just unstoppable in the first time they played.
This guy is just insane, and it shows in every single one of the stats that you look at. But just so you know, that average damage per round and the kills per round, those are the highest that we have in Ascension right now.
Yeah,
Nobody's putting that much damage. Nobody's getting as many kills in a round as Askia. And that is so difficult to do, right? Remembering that this guy is a duelist. And in a lot of cases, for any other team, any other duelist, it is that Jet going in, getting taken down, and sometimes not finding success. But it seems like for Askia, that is a must, and it is going to happen every single time.
Big match today going on for these two teams. The Union, of course, looking to continue that dominance that they've got to show us so far going on in Ascension. And of course, on the other side for Fusion, showing us that they can turn things around and they have what it takes to be putting in that distance. We do have a chance to get a little bit of an insight from our players headed into today's match, though. Check this out.
A Fusion eu achei muito legal, porque eles trouxeram uma comp diferente, a gente não esperava de jeito nenhum. A gente fez a preleção ali achando que ia ser uma comp e veio outra, e a gente vai ter que se esforçar para se adaptar bem, porque quando você entra assim sem esperar a comp do adversário, você pode dar uma pipocada ali e pode até perder a partida. Então a gente vai ter que trabalhar melhor a nossa adaptação para não tomar muito round.
Pienso que son un muy buen equipo de tabla alta en este torneo. Nos vamos a preparar mucho más. El partido de ayer se vio que estábamos ahí, pero por detalles o por ansiedad no podíamos competirles aún más. Y nos vamos a preparar el doble, nos vamos a salir con esta cara que salimos el día de hoy contra 0-0 Nation. Y vamos a intentar y vamos a tratar de ganar contra ellos y pasar a la siguiente ronda.
Eu acho que o campeonato ele vai se resumir a isso, porque ninguém se conhece. Os times das regiões eles se conhecem, mas no campeonato inteiro não. Então, quem se adaptar melhor vai se sobressair, claro.
No, obviamente el trabajo no está hecho, apenas estamos empezando playoffs, pero cada vez más van a ver la mejor cara de Fusion, lo que traemos, todo el esfuerzo se va a ver reflejado y ojalá poder llevarnos ese spot en las franquillas de Américas.
A gente não está pensando muito ainda nesse passo da franquia, porque senão a gente vai estar pulando um step. A gente está focando no agora. A gente quer muito passar para essa franquia, mas a gente vai focar no agora porque é mais importante. E eu acredito que a gente consegue levar esse campeonato, sim.
Something that we talked about in our show is the fact that we haven't seen any series go that distance and get that 3 maps. Considering the strength from the Union and what we've gotten to see improvement-wise coming out from Fusion, Dan, do we think that this is going to be the day?
I feel like this is it. This is it for sure. It's a Fusion that started very, very slow towards the beginning. Everybody was even talking about them being the worst team in the tournament, honestly. And from what we saw yesterday, the little improvements, I think it's clear that this has the potential to go all the way. The players have even talked about it on Twitter, saying the first match, we didn't get to show as much. The second one, we made less mistakes. The third one, of course, happy because we get that first win. So now it seems like it is that next step, right? That next win, and it is a rematch.
I feel a lot less optimistic about this going to 3. And I think the thing about it is the one simple sample size that we had when it came down to yesterday doesn't, for me, overwhelmingly put out of reach what happened during won more rounds yesterday than they did in the combined 3 matches that they played in groups. That doesn't just stick for me. If it does, I become a believer. But at the moment, I still feel really antsy about if the Fusion team could actually put together a similar setup that they did yesterday. Because I think flat out, not only did Fusion play solid, but I also think 00 Nation didn't play that well yesterday. I don't expect that to come out for the Union. I think they're going to come out firing on all cylinders. And I don't feel as optimistic about this match in particular going to 3.
That's interesting though, because putting opponents aside when we're looking at Fusion and what we got to see, a couple of the criticisms was how they were playing like as a team when we got to see that they had this full weaponry, and it just didn't really necessarily look the cleanest. But yeah. Dan, I thought when we saw yesterday's game, regardless of who they're going up against, that stuff like that team coordination and playing off of each other, that doesn't change depending on your opponent. And I thought that looked solid, which then gives me that hope for today.
It was a big topic of conversation, the way that the plans were and the plans looked towards the beginning of the rounds when it came to the full buy rounds and the eco rounds for Fusion towards the first matches, that group stage where you'd see them kind of spread across, playing a default, playing a lot slower and not really working out. That was kind of players getting picked apart, not really having the numbers advantage to work with until they went into the eco rounds and they were playing a lot much more together, more coordinated, and that's when they found success. It seems like yesterday that success also was found by mixing it up a little bit more, going for these executions in a lot of times all together, playing those 4-1s across the maps that we've seen very often. And so that gives me, in the same way, like you say, Sierra, big hopes for what they're going to be able to do today. But I do also want to agree, right? It's still the Union that you're going against.
Yeah, I think the thing too, we got to remember that yesterday, this Fusion team came out with a lot of unexpected looks. We were expecting them to be playing fast pace with a lot of upbeat tempo. That wasn't the case. And 00 Nation had to take both of their timeouts for map number 1 before round 9. So yeah, that's never great news. I don't think that that's going to catch the Union by surprise today. Going into the upper bracket after seeing them play 3 different maps, or 3 different series rather, where they were playing with like a lot of speed and a lot of vigor, and then not having that happen, Union's going to have a chance to look back at that and say, okay, if we don't get an execute in the first 30 seconds, we have to trust that our default and our more consolidated play is going to come out on top. So pending that Union does not get put into a spot where they feel like they need to take a timeout early to adjust to whatever Fusion wants to bring out, I still feel really solid that these 5 boys right here are going to get the job done.
And of course, it's going to depend so much on what the maps are going to look like. Are they going to be the same? Are they going to be similar to what we had for the first match between the two? Or is it going to be completely different? If it were to be, especially that Pearl that caught my attention the most, I feel like it's a Fusion that had some right ideas but needed to be executed better. When you think of the Euro, the first thing that I think of is even last year, it was an evil genius actually playing a Yoru with a lot of cool ideas towards that B side, trying to create that space with it. And when you think of Neon, you're thinking more of last year's exit composition. So it is kind of trying to find that mix between the two that is so difficult, right? Nobody else is playing this composition, but there were some kind of inspirations that you can see Fusion was trying to grab from different teams, from their own ideas. And against a Union that wanted to slow it down and shut it down towards that B side, when you know Askia is going to be there with an operator. And on that defensive side, that's a whole other point.
Yeah, and that's a really strong point because I did not particularly feel that the Yoru and Neon that you're relating to worked out in combination where it did yesterday between Darker and Verdi in particular. It just felt like they were playing too isolated away from one another. They weren't enabling each other to find success. Where yesterday, seeing Verdi just get away with murder, it felt like more often than not with free entries into sites, largely thanks to the great pressure that Darker was putting on. That is the recipe for success. Need to see that formula come through immediately as we get to our map selection here, Sierra.
And this is going to be absolutely huge, considering this is the rematch from groups where things went disastrously wrong, and things kind of actually shaping up the same to be starting things off. And Dan, we're going to be going back to Pearl.
This is exactly what we were talking about, having our theories about if we're going to see that Pearl again, how the compositions are going to look like, but it's actually looking very, very similar to that first match. Pearl and Fracture, both maps that got played between the two, and both that went the side of the Union.
And the Fracture yesterday is great news for Fusion because that's where Verdi and Darker combined to have the most significant actual pressure on the map. And then Ascent as map number 3 again, I think that's a good one for Fusion. They looked great on the offense yesterday. That's going to have to be the case again today if we do get to 3. The problem here is, what is Fusion actually going to pick on Pearl? They have tried everything under the sun when it comes to trying to run some combination of double duelists. They were able, like we talked about, to try to force their way on to the Neon and the Yoru. I didn't like the way that looked whatsoever. I would like to see them pull out a more dedicated Sentinel this time around. You know what you're going to get when it comes down to the Union. They love to lock things down with that combination of the Killjoy with either a KO right next to her or the Sova. So I think this is going to be one of those situations that Fusion needs to play a more straight up meta comp rather than trying to do something weird like play double duelist.
And I absolutely agree, mainly because of these duelists and the way that they work. If you played out Yoru or that Neon, or the combination of the two, even thinking about the Reina that they played in LATAM for those finals, you're thinking about putting a lot of pressure on that attacking side, especially towards B, to be successful. And that is something that the Union is not going to have to worry about, most likely playing that Jet once again.
We're going back, though!
No, I'm not a fan. Not a fan, Sierra. Not a fan of this.
Hey, redemption arc. I feel like that's the redemption arc for Fusion. We saw where it went disastrously wrong with that Neon and the Yoru. As fun and as unconventional it is. So Dan, they could be doing that run back and hopefully prove us wrong.
That's what they talked about. They said we had some cool ideas, but when it came to that second half, when they went on that defensive side, they couldn't really show us much. So that is going to be what I'm going to keep my eyes on, the improvement that this team has, and a composition that remains the same. But it's yet to be proven, right? Nobody else is playing this.
We're keeping it fun. We're keeping it flashy, heading back to Pearl for the rematch here. And now it's time for Sully and Upmind to let us know how they feel headed into our first map.
Thank you so much, our lovely ladies on the desk, and Shift, who is a hater, not believing in the Fusion whatsoever. I'm not going to lie, though. He's got a valid point. The Union are on a hot streak, and it is truly on the Fusion to bring them back down to earth.
The empirical data is there. The Union have been perfect, whether you look at their Brazilian league play or here during Ascension, sure. But Fusion, they're on one at the moment. And here on Pearl, I mean, they have a bit of a different look, but they're looking to absolutely shock the Union.
Union starting on the defense here. We expect nothing less, just quick aggression out here towards A. And very similar look to what we've seen the last 2 times that they've played this map. It's get Askia deep out towards B long, and this early aggression here on the A side.
Askia pushing up. He doesn't have a lot of help in terms of the utility. It's only the KJ on this side, but he has found a lot of pixels. Askia picking away at 2, but he has 3, 4 more players running towards his direction. And there's the support. Pank picking up the 1. You still have Pank getting pressured out, playing on the vicinity of the smoke.
And there are 3 players already flanking. The Fusion don't have any Sentinel to watch this flank.
Burst on through, and you still have Askia. Askia again, hasn't been forced to move around whatsoever. Safe in the back, and he ends
Good
up getting
God.
free. He runs into a molly, he's fine for now, and Rafa cleans up the job. Theory goes down, and Union, there's a clean start.
Askia already popping off with 3. He was one of the most fun, explosive Jets to watch during the group stage. Like, there were so many times he was popping off, and on this defensive side, you can already see the way that the Union will play this map in particular. They'll get very aggressive. It was Goo that pushed very deep in towards A, Askia to get control towards B. Two of the main focal points when it comes to the aggression of this Union defense is getting Goo in positions where he can anchor. Surprisingly, he has the most first kills on this Union team, despite this team being known for aggression and Askia being known for entries. Surprisingly, it's Goo that has almost every single person on this defensive side.
Yeah, you're mentioning a controller player, but Goo!
There it is, you see it.
Yeah, he opens up with a double, just like you mentioned, NTK. Behind him cleaning up, everyone else being able to clean up. They Zenny flawless on the round, but Union, again, they have a lot of weapons on this defensive side. Like you mentioned, Askia alongside Goo, they've been very important in the early round, but actually throughout this tournament, we've seen players like Rafa, players like NTK be able to unlock some of their support potential. Pank, of course, he's been a great anchor on his own, but NTK, Rafa, still 2 players to look out for in terms of that support for their defensive players. Finally, a rifle round coming up. Askia pulls up the op already.
And you will need a lot here from Fusion to show the changes and the adjustments and how good they've become on this defensive side. And once again, Goo will early on get aggressive. A great flash setup here as well. And this is what I'm talking about. Goo is always looking for space.
Oh, but he gets shut down immediately. VTED takes down the one. Everyone else from Fusion maintaining their positions. Birdie out over towards that mid side, taking away that KJ util. That's going to force Union to play someone over towards this mid side. That's indeed what Pink is doing, at least readjusting the hold.
He's found quite a bit of space here as well. And Fusion, unfortunately, with the lack of B control, doesn't look like that's where they're headed. NTK hoping to trade his teammate out, but once again, Union pushing this Fusion offense back. And it was one of the clashes that I was watching. Fusion were very good, yes, against 00 Nation and taking map control. Granted, I think 00 Nation played a much more passive defense. And going to this game, would Union make the same mistakes that the Brazilian brothers did? And they aren't. They're pushing the issue and not letting Fusion get comfortable on this map.
One of the biggest criticisms of 0-0 yesterday, they didn't push the issue. Askia with an op 3 rounds in, that absolutely pushes something here for Fusion over towards the mid side. It's Fusion finally making their first step potentially into the round. They're finally pulling up into mid. You still have a player over towards long, but no! That dude through the smoke picking up Pank, and Askia couldn't do anything with the op. It all breaks apart for Union. 2-man advantage for Fusion. You still have Rafa up close, but Theory shuts him out.
That's NTK. Hoping to save this rifle. Maybe get a couple of exits if he is lucky. But Fusion, in this one in particular, despite losing that first man, are able to recover. And it is because of, I think, the space that Verdi was able to establish that gets him all the way up over towards B-Link. And a big gap in the Union defense. The interesting thing is that this Union setup, they don't frequently drop that alarm bot early in towards B-Link. So that could be a gap in this Union defense that Fusion should be keen to exploit. They will get their first round with the rifles. It's another thing is Union will early on again push the issue, fight for map control, look for that early 4 versus 5 that they can establish, or 5 versus 4, apologies, where they have been very dominant, 90% win rate in their 5 versus 4s in this event. And for Union to lose this round is a little bit unprecedented, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Some of that potential has been neutered going forward because I actually think that the Union buy is going to be just a little bit worse for where Askia has to rebuy the op. Tech pause coming in at the moment though. Get to kind of readjust kind of the Fusion attack. You were mentioning again, at least Union's defense, what they need to change. We've seen Fusion's attack change throughout this entire tournament. They become a lot more explosive in a sense, or at least we expected them to be explosive. But they look so much better now.
I think the key difference is not that the Fusion have become more explosive, it's just that they're actually being explosive and putting util behind in a lot of their entries. Verdi, for a time, is not, you know, getting traded out. He's going in by himself. There's no util to support him. Like the last time that they played Pearl against Union, he went 1-6 in first kills and 1-4 on their attacking side in particular. And I think it was a lack of understanding of how to set this guy up, especially with this composition. Like it's a weird comp looking at it just like with the naked eye, but it makes sense. There were a lot of times where Darker was using his Euro ult, trying to get, you know, space, be kind of this drone pinging out players, and at times Fusion looked like a really well-rehearsed team with this composition because of the fact that they were playing extremely smart off of Darker and that ultimate, right? He was pinging out players and they were able to capitalize on that a lot of times, but eventually it was Union that did make those adjustments. They understood how they were going to play this map and were, again, pressing early on, taking map control away from Fusion. And now I think we've seen a new Fusion that are actually putting proper util and really good timings to set Verdi up. It's not that, like, crazy rush. It's the contact until they find that map control that they want, and boom, Verdi, who has been extremely good at entries, and he's always someone to take duels, when he's got util behind him, he's guaranteed to find a kill most of the time, if not get traded.
The big thing, at least going into the rest of this game, is how Verdi and Darker are actually going to be utilized on the defensive side more than anything, because yes, of course, things are very important here on the attacking side for this team. But what if they just can't get the scoreline that they need? Fusion just didn't have the defensive side success on this map, not this map, at all against the Union. They only won 2 defensive rounds in general in their series against the Union. And in their game, Verdi and Darker just didn't show up on that defensive side. They weren't put into places to succeed. At least in my eyes, it has to be a little bit more of a step up from Edu, VTED, Theory, in terms of actually trying to maybe, again, push the issue onto the Union, just the same way that we're looking right now from Fusion.
I think you said it perfectly. This attack for Fusion is the key focus here. Last time, again, only 2 rounds against the Union on their defensive side. And those 2 rounds make up only 2 of the 18 defensive rounds that they've won. They've won 16 defensive rounds against 0-0 Nation. And that is really the only sample size you have on this defensive side from Fusion. And so this attacking side, we get back underway here in round number 4, will have to be one that we keep an eye on. Fusion, what adjustments have they made? We've now got the guns out for both of these sides. And you can still see aggression from both of these sides, at least for Union on the A and B site.
And look at the amount of pressure that NTK already has on that front side. And Meathead thinking about the interaction, but he has to back out immediately. Oh, goodness! Theory. He thought he was free to go. He even let Darker go off on his own over in mid.
And you can see the adjustment that Union have made. They know that Verdi was able to get there before, so this time around, Pank putting util and putting pressure, finding a first kill.
Look at the movement over towards B, though. You have to focus up on Verdi here. Askia around the corner. Could have the off angle to expose this, but NTK reveals the positioning of Verdi. Verdi still walking into this crosshair. Not really knowing where Askia is. Askia hearing the footsteps. NTK. He didn't even see the Yoru. He just lets it go by anyways. And they still kill Darker, VTED, and Edu. Last 2 just looking to tap away essentially at this round. But again, with 45 seconds left, it's not actually completely out of the realm of possibility. You still have Meathead on his own, potentially in a one-on-one over towards mid.
He's gotten pretty decent space here as well, and Pank has been a very solid KJ anchor, so I'd be surprised if he ends up giving his life here. Yeah, very smart, just drops this turret, and they are playing the retake. Union, as aggressive as they are, don't tend to overheat in these situations. And this should be a guaranteed round here with 15 seconds left. Edu hasn't made any space over towards A, and they will just be saving these 2 rifles. They will have enough credits to make the buy happen. Meathead can drop a rifle over to Theory as he's still 150, no need to buy the armor. This round was, again, unfortunately, I feel like Fusion falling back to old ways. You could see the idea from Verdi. As soon as he spots NTK, he is trying to punish, create an open lane for his team to get in, but he goes in kind of naked. No util behind him to support. Doesn't even use his relay bolts to try and earn himself some space and just gets blindsided by Askia in that corner. So that will be Fusion dropping that 4th round coming off the technical pause. They still have a buy to try and make something happen. Ult's starting to come online for both of these sides. Hunter's Fury not too far for NTK, who has been farming that early A orb.
Fusion need to win this round, though. This half is already going to get way out of their hands if they end up losing this. Towards the mid side, it's going to be 3 players already rushing straight into Pank's crosshair. Pank might have a few more. Verdi going down. Pank needing to back on up into the smoke. Very safe, but not Askia. Askia is right in the thick of it. 70 HP, is able to dash away, but Edu Now right on top of this take, one more player over in B, and Rafa gets overwhelmed. Out of nowhere, essentially, Fusion is able to bring back the round.
Pank needs a punish here, and he doesn't get anything. I think this should be a savior from the Union. If Pank could get something, there's a possibility. But Fusion splitting apart this defense. Union maybe overextending with Asuka. He's a player that will be very, very pivotal in these defensive rounds. And his aggression and his ability to find a frag and get out very quickly. But he gets punished by a quick play over towards Link. Yes, the first kill does go the way of Union, but Fusion are very quick to capitalize on the space that Verdi took. There's a missed fault line as Pank punishes, but still, a great flash from Edu, forcing Rafa off the angle, and Asuka thought that B-Link was covered because Rafa was there. He ultimately gets punished because of it, and just Rafa being alone at site, it wasn't going to be enough to hold it down. And Fusion, a much more coordinated hit. You saw the fault line covering one angle, the instant capitalization of Verdi getting that opening, or not the opening, apologies, the opening space at the least.
That was still a big play from Union over towards B long that broke down. That could have essentially changed the round entirely. Askia getting essentially called out.
That round does at least bring us back to a possible Fusion good half, right? You were talking about it. That was the round that they needed to pick up. It resets them. Now they've been able to maintain it. They're leaning very heavily towards A, I think, to get Edu onto this ultimate.
Gonna be fast. Pretty much everyone from Fusion on this side. They're gonna have to take art control at the same time. Here comes Verdi.
Are you kidding me?
And Goo has the angle, taking down Verdi. 3 players are on this site for Union. They have such a tight defense at the moment, so Fusion.
Look at that, trying to punish this ult orb grab. That's perfectly read here from Union. They don't stop him, as Edu can reset this hit here.
Yeah, they do have some map control over towards the mid side.
There's a smoke, hold on, a smoke over towards B-Link that just completely voided
Pank.
Theory and allowed him to cross through.
Yeah,
And I don't think he knows.
There goes Theory. Takes down the one. There's still another one over towards Spawn. But Askia, he's cutting down the space too. It's a push and pull. Askia, all the way in Spawn, picks up the kill onto Meathead, can go back into B. But B has already been taken.
I think Edu here will have to make a decision. Where do you pop that ult? And he's gone in towards defender Spawn, but they're not pushing it. They're just getting the spike down.
Oh, Darker goes in to try to shock Goo, to try to split the goalpost too with Rafa over in heaven. Can't do it. Theory and Edu. Last 2 remaining. Theory is very disconnected at the moment, but with double snake bites, definitely has a chance. Theory, he's running into a flank, and Askia didn't hear him at all. That's a gift for Theory. But here comes now the man advantage for Union. Edu picking up one. Rafa does pick up the kill onto Theory, and now it becomes basically impossible for Edu.
This is brilliant!
1 more to go for Edu. How has he done this? Rafa goes down in a heap, and Edu pulls off the clutch.
I cannot believe the awareness from this guy, Edu. The Aftershock splits these 2 players up, and NTK just trying to punish, I think maybe thinking his teammate was with him. And this is just split-second decision-making. I don't know how Askia, first of all, doesn't hear Theory, and this is an immaculate 2 versus 4. You'll see it here in the replay. Edu giving time to drop this Aftershock and keeping Rafa off his back and allowing him to isolate the fight onto NTK, who I believe should have ultimately just waited there for the fight. And that round means absolutely everything to this Fusion team. It's reset Union here entirely.
Now watch out, Askia. Pretty much has the only real piece there for Union in the round. Knives go out, they get shut down immediately. Goo trying to do something crazy, but a decoy in his face. Goo, however, makes it a bit possible, at least in terms of the rest of this round. Picking up 2 and NTK picking up another one. Oh, but Fusion!
You're kidding me! What?
No! What is happening?
The Eco Warriors just got ecoed. And by Sheriff's a double from Goo, and then the rest is history.
It's a Wild West.
They played so split apart. And, I mean, okay, it was a very nice double, triple swing in towards Hart, but then the rest, Goo just getting so lucky to find that. I mean, this is not some tactical prowess from Union. This is just 1v1s after the first double spray down. I won't lie, Fusion played pretty smart in this round. But Union just able to dismantle them, and I would definitely call a tactical timeout if you are the Union. That's a crazy round, and not a round that they were expecting to pick up, so now they have probably got to adjust their game plan moving forward.
Yeah, that one's just a head scratcher. That's a big mental reset from realistically both teams.
Yeah.
The Union, they don't want to lose themselves in a situation like this. They got to reset, got to make sure that they remind themselves that those rounds aren't the type of rounds that they should be repeating. but also Fusion. I guess it's more just like they just lost themselves. And those are the types of situations that we saw potentially over in LATAM. But in this tournament, their mental have been on a completely different level. The overheating have not been there.
And now Union it always takes them a little bit time to adjust. You saw it in the interview. They were talking about how, yeah, it's a weird composition. It just took us a little bit to adjust. There were 4 rounds in a row from Fusion the first time they played this map. And now we're looking at a different Fusion. So now Union coming off this tack pause. It was the 4th round where they called a tactical timeout. And that's when things started to pick up here for the Union. And this time Goo's gotten aggressive in a different spot. And I think Fusion are just trying to bait out Util, expecting some kind of peek. But in reality, Goo has gone the other way. We've got 3 ultimates on both of these sides. And you'll see here how Darker will use his ult and how good Fusion are at punishing with those pings. Adu as well, who just uses ultimate. It's only 1 off it, so there's a lot of promising moments here possibly for Fusion.
Yeah, here we go, the human recon. Darker.
No, but this is a fake here. This is something that Union are used to seeing. Is this Darker, your ult, that is the catalyst for their entries.
So he runs all the way over to B to potentially get a wrap in instead. But there goes a big shot from Askia. The TP is all the way over towards A, and it's not going to matter. Union, they have to hold down B at the moment. Fusion have no other option. Askia just continues the firing range. Second kill onto Edu, easy. Darker, he's already been revealed to, a knife catching his position. Knows at the moment about Askia. Meathead has the angle. Again, I already said it before. I'll say it again. Still basically an impossible situation for Fusion. Darker, however, does TP out onto site. But Goo has the angle. Union picks up the clean one.
And you can see the idea that Fusion had, which was this is something that Union are conditioned to off of the last map that they've played. It's Darker's ultimate is always going to be where the hit is coming from. And especially in a composition where you don't have that like initiator drone, you're going to use Darker as kind of your info gather. But Askia holding his ground, not falling for that kind of play. I think unfortunately Fusion not throwing any util behind Darker or even an extra player kind of sells or didn't fully sell the fake. And so Fusion will call attack pause, and I think that's something that they're going to recognize in this timeout, is that if we are going to use Darker's ultimate, we have to put some players there. We have to put some pressure. Otherwise, Union will not rotate.
Yeah, that was honestly the most surprising thing about that, where they completely called out that ultimate. Like you said, they were conditioned to it. They did their studying. Now we're looking at a Fusion where once again they are stuck at a bit of a deficit. They've always found themselves at a deficit, or at least on the other side of the odds per se throughout this tournament, or really throughout their history, whether it be the LATAM finals, whether it be, of course, the group stage of Ascension, whether it be the last round where they destroyed 0-0. Fusion have always seemed to surpass any sort of obstacle that does come ahead of them, but this one is seeming a bit too tall in a sense.
Nah, not right now. Not right now. They're looking pretty good. You can definitely see the changes that they've made. There's been exponential growth from day 1 of the group stages to day 1 of playoffs, and even to now, a lot more coordinated again. They won't have the bye to suffice a full fight. But we have 4 ultimates, and Verdi in particular loves to go crazy with this Neon ult, and you'll see here, they'll probably set him up here with Edu's ult.
And the smoke in his face, Askia has to completely reposition.
KO ult.
There goes the wall again. Askia has a bit of help with the KO ult, but even then, the stinger in the hands of Darker. The ultimate is about to go away. The overdrive is about to come back. NTK has the cross.
And they've elected to just cancel and hold for the retake. Maintain this backside control, but as that smoke fades, Verdi goes down.
No, there goes the ultimate though. This Viper's Pit is going to help out Fusion so much with the lockdown. And
that's a punish.
That gives Union the sight back potentially. There goes the shocks. It's taking away Theory bit by bit. 42 HP left on Theory. Theory needs to run away. This round should be theirs. The classic is there. Oh, the Molly could have absolutely helped Theory though.
They're gonna knife him. Oh man, Fusion. They committed so much in this round. Viper's Pit, the Neon ult here as well. But Union play this pretty spectacularly. Just backing up, knowing that they had the ultimate. Rafa as well, slowing the push down. And the key thing is, yes, it cancels out Verdi's ultimate. The main thing is that it just prevents Verdi from getting aggressive and earning space, which is probably the biggest thing and why Rafa is able to maintain this control and get back into the retake. Ultimately, extremely quickly, because there is a threat if Verdi has that ultimate and they combo it with the Rolling Thunder, he could get a lot of space, but that's not earned here in this round because he pops that null command. And Union, just again, very cautious, patient, using the lockdown to get back into sight. We'll have the full buy here for Fusion, who still have that Rolling Thunder to work with.
Revealing area.
Fury at the same time for NTK, but here comes a big push coming out from Fusion. It's going to be 4 players here, and there, like you said, Huntress Fury coming out early to try to punish Fusion, to try to funnel them essentially, but it just doesn't work. Verdi instead beelining it towards spawn, almost tried to find Pank. NTK is still alive. Rafa over at mid, trying to rotate back into A, gets shut down by Theory. Fusion covering up almost every option here for the Union. Nobody coming out from the short side. Everyone from the Union forced to come up from spawn. They are all over towards the pit position, though. Do they find Verdi? Verdi in a beautiful position. Do they actually peek him? Askia is able to pick one back off of the op. The op is probably going to be very important for the rest of this half. Hopefully they keep it. Still going to be Edu holding down the first contact, but they still don't know about Verdi. Verdi is coming in all the way towards spawn. Still the man advantage for Fusion.
See the barrel too.
The man advantage was always there for Fusion. They always had the actual map control. Finally, when Union start to cross their way into sight, they go down.
What an exceptional post-plant at exec from Fusion. And one of the strengths of this team has always been understanding the macro gameplay when it comes to the ultimates and how teams will utilize it. And this round, they were prepared for that Huntress Fury. Players sat back very deep to break this dart. Not this dart, the early dart. And they were expecting it. They were ready for that goo push. They set Verdi up with a fault line to take goo out of the mix. And that early entry, knowing again that there was going to be a Sova ult playing in the back site, pop that ultimate, get onto site very quickly. And Fusion kind of coming alive here in the later parts of this second half. Or apologies, this first half. And we'll see how close they can get on this scoreline. As again, this is their stronger side. Their weaker side has always been their defense.
Oh, Pank! Pank! Pinging off some headshots. 2 easy ones for him over in mid. But those are the ultimates. Well, Verdi at least. Huge ultimate in his hand. V-Ted. The only one left with an ulti in this round. But again, the Yoru ulti, excuse me, would have been everything for info in this round. Would have been everything for an exec. Now Meathead, Theory, Edu forced to do something dry.
Look at the control that Union have at the moment. NTK tucked in towards A main. Someone as well watching this sewers flank, that alarm bot as well. Just a quick recognition for Pank to play off of. This round seems difficult for Fusion to get back into. It will take some of these individual plays, specifically Meathead in this position, to try and get set up. But I mean, these fault lines are just not connecting from Edu.
Bit of an off angle there, though.
30 seconds
off
left.
Up, but good stuff. Union bit by bit.
I do believe if you're Theory, you should be the one saving here. Edu has got some wiggle room in terms of cash, but I think he'll want to stay alive to be able to drop Darker, but they might not get away with that. This could be a very costly fight, and it is.
Wow.
NTK finding both of them. And the finances, we'll see how they are able to gather up a buy. Again, this is a light armor meta, but I'm just concerned about Theory in particular.
Stuck in the mud. All the way down at 2K, gonna be pretty much forced to be on a Stinger or a Spectre.
Jeez, Pank.
This was everything, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's just been adjusting this KJ setup towards B-Link. First, there was no pressure there, which Verdi was able to collect upon, and then Pank started applying pressure. He had an alarm bot, Nanostorm pushing, looking for the first pick. That didn't work. That worked once, and then he got punished ultimately, so he just hit here again. For this last round, he's playing the same setup. But Fusion will use the Dark Ult, and this is the adjustment they're making. They're putting some util behind him.
Is he using it as a flank, or is he getting it as this information? He's jumping through. Art, he finally jumps out. Goo alongside Verdi. It's Goo getting taken down by Verdi. There goes Theory taking down NTK, but you still have Rafa. Rafa looking for a one-tap, but can't find anything. So overwhelming by Fusion.
And left onto just 2. Asuka and Pank who needs this kill.
Remaining.
It's only Pank now for Askia. He could have done so much there with his knives, but that is the chip away from Fusion. Things were going to look very ugly going into the second half if Fusion weren't able to pull that off.
It's a very great way to close it out. That was a very clean round from Union. From the ult pop and knowing how to play with it, I think ultimately having a perfect game plan to go in towards Art, right? The fault line as well to punish Church, and the flashes from Darker to set his team up. It's not the best half from Fusion. It's actually the same from the first time they played it. And now in the defense, where they only were able to muster 2 rounds against this Union squad. Again, they've only won 18 defensive rounds, and 16 of them came from just yesterday against 00 Nation. So this isn't a team that is favored on the defense whatsoever. And so, what changes have they made? Are they more comfortable with getting aggressive? We will have to see as Union start 5 leaning B.
Union gonna stack on so much pressure early on here on Diffusion. They already have combined the 2 duelists though to maybe add some mobility, some extra mobility. B is going to be a complete retake setup, surely, of Theory.
I'm really not a big fan of this from Fusion. Rotating towards A, I would honestly just gamble this towards B as soon as that contact's made. This is a Union team that pride themselves on their post plans. We've seen on Pearl how many times they get into setups and how many times they win.
Here comes Rafa, already cutting down the retake. At the spawn of it, there goes at least Fusion.
That's a great fault line.
The fault line is absolutely insane because Verdi finds a red carpet to find 2. It's NTK alongside Pank. All the way over and long. There's not a lot of util here. Edu doesn't have everything. But here comes the shock dart. Shock dart doesn't connect. It was only the one shock dart to cover it up. And they even give themselves a chance here with the 2v2, but it's over.
Absolutely dismantling that post plant Fusion. They get the trade immediately as Rafa tries to get aggressive, but that fault line in the back, that was perfectly read. That's where Union will typically at least post guaranteed 1 player in these post-ins, and I imagine it's something that we'll see more as this half goes on, but what a ridiculous fault line. And for a team as good as Union in these post plans, Fusion came in this with flawless fashion. I mean, we've seen Union win 84% of their post plants in this event. They've been one team that if you give literally 5 seconds to set up, they will guaranteed win the post plant. Doesn't happen here. Union will try their hand once again at aggression towards B, where Fusion, typically a team that will sit back and play a little bit more passive on their defense.
Very Verdi on that off angle. Now readjusting. Gonna have a crossfire with the other duelist. They don't check Verdi though! Verdi getting 3 for free. Not a single person checking his corner, and now Pank and Goo make it only Pank. Left now in the round, Pank. There's something insane here, actually, coming up from behind Theory. I don't even knew about it, but Azeni flawless. Puts Fusion back in the game.
Fusion, just again, looking like a much more well-coordinated team with their util. Granted, Verdi was literally just, I mean, they had the better guns. You couldn't expect much there from the Union.
Right.
And Fusion off to a flying start in this second half, already matching the last time they played on the defense, which was 2 rounds against a Union offense. But for now, with the guns back in the hands of the Union, it's something that was a mistake I felt from this Fusion lineup, is playing a very passive defense, not looking to take map control, not looking to fight, but they are this time around. And I'm glad they didn't show their hand early on the defensive side. They put Darker in a pretty aggressive spot and a really nice lurk area as well.
Oh, they know about him now, but the TP wasn't safe. Back over towards spawn too. It was a fast A rotate.
He's gotten that early info here. We're gonna see some shifting here from Fusion in a second.
It's so difficult from Verdi. He's all alone.
And they just cut his info off. Verdi's kind of on an island right now. I love the old pop, and we'll see what he can do.
No, did he just stun himself? Poor Verdi, and now Theory gets exposed. Same thing with Darker. It's all a disaster for Fusion. Ted and Edu. Last 2 remaining to actually pick up the pieces, but yeah, Union essentially 1 by 1 finding a couple of gifts. Now Pank.
For any damage here, Edu. He does get 1. Maybe charge up the ult here as well for a little bit. But Fusion, you can see again how this defense will play. They're not a team that will get aggressive, fight for early map control, and that was, again, one of the weaknesses I felt against the Union the last time they played, even against M80. In the one round that we saw where 00 Nation actually elected to get aggressive, that being the last round of Ascent, that's where Fusion, unfortunately, fell flat a little bit. Right, giving up a lot of space to the Union early on in these rounds. Granted, this was just their bonus, so I'm hoping things change here once they get the rifles actually out. No ults to account for just yet. But we're seeing, I mean, there's at least a slight modification. Darker pushing up to that pillar, it kind of bodes, in my opinion, a little bit well for maybe the style change we'll see from Fusion. But again, giving that space to Union, a team that's very good at contacting, making those fast pops and explosive entries from Askia, is not going to go well here if you are Fusion.
Now that's, of course, if Fusion actually dedicate themselves to playing the full retake. If they do opt to actually hold that fast take, God knows how many players are going to go down early in the round. Union, I'm putting out a bit of a different look. Yes, they do put out the contact over towards B long once again, but everyone is an A.
Default last 3 rounds have been that contact with a drone, and Rafa just walking up.
It's an easy contact, but Meathead actually has a chance to fight here. Picks up the first. Askia all the way out in the open. There you go, Meathead.
Spike down here for the Union. Again, a team very strong in the post plant. 4 players already arriving here from Fusion, and Goo's going to look for space here. I like this quick recognition. They've split themselves up, and they won't give an easy spray down. You have to play the ones here.
Now everyone else from the Union focusing up on site now. This is a huge reposition for the Union. This is just a second angle for them to crossfire on site. And Pank, do they need anything else? Do they need anyone else? Pank picking up 3 easily, make it a 4th. Everyone on the retake getting swept away by Pank.
Pank just dealing it out against Fusion. 4 in the final round. He's the only one that's actually fighting on site because he's got his nanoswarms down. And it's NTK that was sitting up for a lineup. Goo looking for space, trying to play alive with his Gravwell. And Pank doing everything he can to keep this team at least in this half, even with the first rifle round coming out for Darker. And he has been an underrated player for this roster. And Fusion trying to play the retake on the sides, again, giving space to this Union team. It allows Rafa to find that first kill.
Birdie. Tried to do something crazy, same thing with Darker, but again, it's just Fusion throwing everything at the wall. Around where they only have pistols, but Union, this is the good, at least look out of them, good situational look that we didn't see from Fusion in that first half. Everyone together, nobody pushing out in any extra angle. All 5 players just committing to the mid situation. Now Fusion left with only 3, Meathead, Theory, and Edu. Not a single one of those players are over towards the B side.
The Eco Kings. Unfortunately, I think be out of this round. This next one will be very crucial to Fusion in staying afloat in this map. And I think ultimately in this series, Fracture, a map that if you are a Brazilian fan, you must be very happy it's in the map pool. These are the only 2 maps so far that Union have played in Ascension, Pearl and Fracture. And there's a lot of film on them. Fusion have definitely done their homework the last 2 times that Union have played. Haven't changed too much. But it will be this next rifle round that could decide the fate of not just this map, but again, of this series, given the way that Fracture has gone every single time Union have played it. Not a team that just dominated Fusion, a team that also dominated M80. It's a map that a lot of teams have struggled against Union on because of how aggressive they can be and how many lanes there are on Fracture. So again, next round kind of means everything here for Fusion.
Theory.
Okay.
He's giving themselves a chance for the rest of this game. Eco-wise, maybe forcing Union to reinvest a little bit, but they are going to go down finally. Like you said, big round coming up. Union win this one out, they can essentially go up to 12.
And there's some ultimates here for Union. A lot of ultimates in their favor, and this is the crucial round, and they've got so much to play with. The lockdown already initiated. But NTK, 1 off his Hunter's Fury. Goo, I think only 2 off his Cosmic Divide. This next round is not looking very, very good here for Fusion in terms of the ult economy. We'll see what the Union will use. Fusion are a team that are very good at recognizing the threat of ultimates, and that's why they've called this TAC pause to try and sort out how these ultimates will go down and what their protocols will be for it.
Yeah, but again, incredibly important timeout. Figure things out here, the rest of this game is very possible. But here on Pearl, again, we haven't really seen the full effect of those duelists, right? The full effect of potentially that aggression that we were calling upon. Union, however, again, playing very safe. Not exactly a team to really freak out, to really actually try to push it all the way down onto a take whenever they are on attack. We haven't seen anything too overwhelming from the Union, from Askia, even though we do claim Askia to be this great jet. He's not exactly this, I guess you could say, like, spearhead for this team whenever they are making these group takes. He's not exactly being the huge star. He's there for the refracts. He's there for the trades. Players like Rafa, players like Goo, they could take that on a lot more, but here on the defensive side, it was Pank.
And it was 2 off the null command for Rafa, not Goo's ultimate. And Fusion will actually take space, looking to capitalize on a lot of early aggression here like they did in their eco. Goo's got to be careful here. He's got the smokes, and he's down. That will make this a lot easier of a round here for Fusion right off the bat.
All this empty space here for the Union. Fusion, they're not actually looking to close down on it at the moment. Ferdy, he's just watching the edge of this. They don't actually have a smoke fully covering that Hunter's Fury. It's only potentially hitting down on one. The Hunter's Fury maybe just a little bit off the lockdown, giving them a little bit more space, but Fusion have already gone down to so many players. The Union now down to 2. Askia, NTK, looking to fight all the way back. This is a huge hit for Askia. Askia starts it off with 1. NTK around the corner, but it's all Askia. Meet
Askia
could all go down to the blades of Askia. 1 more to go. Theory cooking up, whipping up a way to get back into this round. NTK and Askia find angles right onto Theory, and it's Askia with an ace.
I cannot believe how they get back into this round. Fusion did everything right. Punished aggression towards B-Link off the Hunter's Fury. Scaled their way back in, used flashes to get into the site. But this is all it takes, an individual to step up when the time is needed. And Askia has been a hero so many times for this roster. And he's the difference maker in a lot of these rounds. The difference maker for the Union at times in series, in maps. And that was possibly the series flipping round. And Fusion, not a lot left in the tank. This buys everything they got left, and they've already gone down a man.
So unfortunate for Verdi, but they did have the second option there. Edu faltering, not able to get the trade. Everyone else over on A.
Null command left over here. Cosmic Divide is all for the post. And Union are not a team to let go of these post plans easily. Again, 84% win rate coming into this matchup and throughout this event. And they are looking to close this one down and find map point.
Darker help out with his retake here. He still has the ultimate. He could still clear up some space. And indeed, he puts on the mask and gets on in. But Askia and NTK both finding the 2 other individuals here on Fusion. Darker doesn't have an inkling about NTK. Union has their number. 1 more for Union to close out Pearl.
13-7 was the way that Pearl went last time between these 2 teams. And unfortunately, it's looking that way again. 4 Guardians bought out here. And a perfect scale up, by the way, as well from the Union. No Yuto just quietly walking into the site. And Meetits stood no chance there in dealing with that art play. Viper's Pit for Theory. Not using actually a judge to clog up mid. I don't think he's going to pop it early, which is surprising. No command for Rafa still, too.
A more patient of a look for Fusion over towards Art, though. It's going to be the Breach alongside the Neon. They have so much potential here in this position, but how's the first contact actually going to work out? Meathead on top of the box. Askia doesn't see him, but Askia almost gets all 3, and he breaks open Art at the same time. Surely it's all over. No, Darker coming around the corner. He gets 1. Could have made it all possible, though, and now it's all Theory. Theory 1v3.
A Guardian in a dream. Viper's Pit left over. If he can even get onto site, an alarm bot just already waiting for him.
Been spotted, still has a Viper's Pit potentially to use. But the util is all here for the Union. Double nanos, nade, a knife, multiple stars to go. Viper's Pit does help out, and it does come out in Theory. Finally gets funneled. The Union take away the first.
And again, similar fashion to the way that the first map played out when they played Pearl. 13-7, Union showing utter dominance here in this first map. But it's, again, the map pick of Fusion, a map that, unfortunately, I think ultimately had to go the way of Fusion, and ultimately doesn't, even despite the changes, the new look on their offensive side. It was the defense that we were more concerned about, and I think those concerns held up.
Yeah, but again, are we exactly surprised? This has been the exact same map pool for this team throughout the entire tournament. The Union have played Pearl and Fracture in every game so far, and they're doing it again in this BO3, and it started off in literally exact same way that it has. I mean, even against Fusion, Fusion only won 2 rounds in their second.
Yeah, there's a lot of film on this team, and so I'm surprised Fusion maybe not ready for all these plays. I think ultimately it comes down to Union and their team play. There's a lot to break down here, a lot to sift over if you are a LatAm fan. I know Dry is probably going to be mulling over this one, so we're going to throw things to the desk.
Is that true, Dan? Are you molded a little bit?
No, I'm gonna be honest, looking at what happened before, and I know that we talked about this going to a map 3, but I don't think it was because of Pearl. Pearl, it belongs to the Union, and nobody can contest it.
Yeah, coming out into here, I feel like too, with the fact that it was set up that this is this rematch, we got to see that same neon Euro composition coming out shift. I feel like that almost set a bad precedent right out of the gate, that we were going to see that exact same map score coming on by as Union are just on a different level sometimes, it felt like.
You know, I'll give a small bit of credit to Fusion because the offensive side did look a little bit cleaner when they started to get into the deeper depths of the first half, talking in full gun rounds in particular. But still, it's just like defensively, it's just so hard, I feel like, with that combination of agents to make anything proactive actually come to life outside of just playing people essentially face up in 1v1s, which we often saw be opted by Fusion, especially through mid-map. It just wasn't really fully working out. There were a couple of good moments here and there where Verdi was kind of just unchecked or was freed up into some tight spaces, but that was all on retake, and that's not something that Fusion really felt like they really wanted to do. It looked like they were trying to like take over the outsides of the map, and I don't know, I just don't like the look of how Verdi and Darker play this away from one another. They looked so good yesterday playing a combination of one another, so to see it be almost complete opposite today just feels like a bit of a reversal back to things during the group stage, which really didn't work out all that well for them.
I feel like too, when we were looking at how things were playing out, that when Fusion was getting an idea right, when we got to see some of the great things, I'm thinking of doing that crazy 1v3 right to start things off. That seemed like it could be such a great thing in momentum shift. And then all of a sudden the next round coming out from the Union, Dan, we get to see this Sheriff Thrifty that then all of a sudden Fusion are just on the back foot again and having to readjust. Like, they lose that momentum, they lose that spark that could be the catalyst to move things forward.
Like you said, they lose that spark and they lose the momentum that for Fusion, they get some insane rounds and they have gotten them throughout and since that group stage, but then they lose it just like that. Is actually a problem that the players, the coach have recognized in the past, losing those big rounds that really allow the momentum to shift and go the way of this team. And it's unfortunate because we see a crazy play from these guys and then they lose to a Thrifty on the other side.
The other thing on top of that, not just outside of the momentum shifts, but the keys towards what we were trying to build up as far as how does Fusion win this matchup, it's to be better on entry, even from the offensive side where they didn't look particularly poor, but Pank went 7-0 in first kills to deaths. So when you have your Killjoy locking things down with that much amount of success from the defensive side, things like that are going to continue to be a problem for you. And again, I just didn't think that this agent composition was ever going to crack the code of what the Union have historically always done so well on this map. I could at least give some applause for trying it again and maybe making it a little bit more polished, but defensively, it just was not there in any form for me when it comes down to what Fusion needed to do to establish map control just from the get-go.
Well, we did say that if there was going to be a day where we would start seeing these map 3s coming out, it could potentially be today. We'll have to see if it could be that first series if Fusion has enough in the tank to try and take this next win over on Fracture. We're going to be taking a quick break while we get that queued up. Be back soon.
Since the beginning of the team, we talk about playing this tournament to be on the VCT Americas is our first objective, because winning the VCB doesn't mean nothing if we don't win here right now. We have to win here to make our biggest objective. I'm Rafa, I play EGL and Flex for the Union. Pank is our sentinel, so everyone expects that he has to be a little bit defensively, but I think his best play style is play more aggressive, like a sentinel, who the people don't expect that, like a Killjoy taking 1v1s and something like that. I think he can surprise the people.
He is so solid. I guess this is his play style.
RVN is like our controller, so he's the guy, he's more defensive. He's really good, calm. He can make good decisions during the rounds, so I think he's our pilot, I don't know, something like that.
He's so solid too, and I guess the play style is like Pink, but still more defensive.
NTK is the best in aiming. He's a really good play initiator, but he's really good taking 1v1s too. Askia is our duelist, so he's really aggressive. He can like make 1, 2, 3 kills really fast, so we try to put him in positions to do that.
He's really fast doing things, like aiming and shooting, but he's too constant. And Rafa is our flex and IGL, so he's like our brain. He thinks for everyone.
Yeah, the best part about the comp here for this one, I'm gonna hold that thought as we just jump right into the action. The Union collect 2, make it 3, make it 4, make it!
I think my career, I really had some ups and downs, you know. I play other FPS, so I win in games there, 2 champions. So here in VALORANT, I start 2 years ago. So I started with a team we're not performing really well. So the Union made me a new player, something like that. VALORANT made me a new player. Really have fun, play the game. So I think now I'm just having really fun. I think with the team, with the guys playing. So I don't know. I think it's this.
TU still has the opportunity to just inch out of the angle and indeed capitalizes on one.
You're serious?
Another one. Rafa!
It's a big change. If we win this, we go into Americas, so the best experience I can have for me.
For me, it's the most important thing. To do all kinds of things in life, you have to having fun with this, so you can put all of you, you know, make the things with love, you know. So for me, it's the most important thing.